Hey, enjoying your blended family. And if you just happen to come across our YouTube channel in any other way, welcome here at this channel on YouTube. We are here to help provide support and resources for your step family. Nowadays, we use the term more blended family because families have been coming together in all sorts of way. And then because we've become a community, we call you our BFAM. And in the summer, we do things a little bit different than our normal podcast recording. So basically, I take this, what we record here in YouTube, is how we've been doing it, or if we record in any other kind of way on a platform with a Zoom, interviews, and all of that, we take that and then we turn it into our podcast that's on any podcast platform on enjoying your blended family. And as we have grown and become a community, we call each other, we are the B fam. And so if you're here listening today, welcome to our B fam. This episode and then the next few episodes that follow this, they come out once a week. We are going to be doing a summer series from the book Loving Him Well. And because I am more of an audio book listener, I don't have the physical copy to show you. I'm going to show you my phone. And in case you don't know me at all, I am Scarlett Tandy, and I am the other half of Enjoying Your Blended Family. And then we have the picture back there. You can't really see it, of our full family. You don't know our story. We have a little bit of a snippet as an intro on both the podcast and here on Enjoying Your Blended Family on YouTube, so that you go kind of hear a little bit. Is like in less than, I think it's like a minute and a half of an intro about our family. But our family is growing and growing. We started out as a blended family. I had 2 biological kids, and then my husband had 1. We married in 2008, so we're coming on celebrating our 16-year anniversary, and then from there, we were pretty much having your typical blended family issues for the first like 7 years of our blending. But then when our kids became teenagers, they each went to go live with their other parents because we had full custody of them at the time. And they would go to their other parents, the standard, either every other weekend, or my stepdaughter that lived, her mom lived in another state. She would go for the summer or long extended holidays when she had the opportunities and stuff. And then when they became teenagers, they all went to go live with their other parents. And so Randall and I's relationship as husband and wife has been kind of like this roller coaster in our blended family ever since. And we're in a new season right now. And sometimes when I come on here to discuss things that I do not feel proficient in, it makes me a little nervous because I don't feel like I can help the way that I want to be able to help. But then we pull in resources, right? When we don't have the answers, we pull in resources. And the thing is, I know what the right answers are. I am not choosing to do what I know is the right thing to do. And so, right now in this season, Randall and I have found ourselves just as busy as we always have, but we are parenting adult kids. And me, as of my biological kid, my stepdaughter, our foster daughter, my daughter-in-law, my stepdaughter's sister. We have grandbaby. My son had a baby, so we have a lot of extended family that's also like our core of our family. And as the mom in the family, I tend to prioritize each of those relationships over our marriage. And then Randall going back to working full time outside of the home after we had left our positions at in full time ministry, which we had left our careers before that, went into full time ministry, then left that and started our own business of Enjoying Your Blended Family. I shared more of that on last episode as a little recap from that. He is now working outside of the home, and he is busier than ever. This job that is a huge blessing from the Lord is also a big time consumer, taking some evenings and weekends away that are already short. and limited for us. So even though we're in a season of parenting adult kids, we should be empty nesters. We have this open door policy type thing, and it has become a revolving door. And we're learning to maneuver that. We know what we're doing is not what we want, but we have not made the choice to figure out how to do something different quite, or we might come up with something, but then we don't stick with it, right? Just like in a lot of the things that we do. So, two things I have currently done in order for me, banging on my mic, sorry about that, for me to do my part in this relationship and in enjoying your blended family. And as the wife and the mother, I want my family to succeed. I want us to make it through the end of this stronger than ever and not let it become something that causes division. Because as soon as you leave an opening, the enemy will come in and try to cause chaos. He will try to kill, steal, and destroy. That is his mission here as he roams this earth, is to destroy marriages. Because if he can destroy your marriage, he destroys your family. And if he destroys your family, he wins. He isolates you and he breaks down the unit that God had put together from the beginning. And so we are very intentional. And when I say I have 0 control over anybody else in my family. I can only do what I can do. And so, although I'm not saying Randall's not on board, he is not real active in seeking the solutions because, to be honest, he's tired, y'all. His plate is full, and he hasn't figured out how to empty some of that stuff off, and continues to wait for next season for that to improve and get better. And for me personally, I know I have my part to play in it because while he is busy, one, I'm here day in and day out with the kids, and I am dealing with a lot of their issues as they're trying to figure out adulthood and pulling me away from things that I need to be doing here during the day. But also, um, it also keeps me from being and prioritizing him when I do have the opportunity, when we do have evenings here together, when we do have time on the weekends, because I'm cram packing it with all kinds of other stuff. So, because I'm the one that has control over me, the two things that I am doing, and I'm taking y'all on this journey with me over the summer, is one, I signed back up for therapy. I haven't done therapy since the kids were moving out and we had a lot going on, like back in 2018, 2019 is when I decided, like, I can't do this on my own. Like, I need somebody to tell me what's normal, what's not normal, what's boundaries look like in certain situations. And I went, and it was extremely helpful back then. And I was able to utilize those tools during that season and has carried me, about 4 or 5 years now. And I'm in a season of trying to figure out where my role is as a mom to adult kids now and not overstepping that, not taking on their responsibilities as my responsibilities. And so I'm like a few weeks in, and that has been really beneficial. And then another thing I'm doing is I'm doing some like homework on my own, which is reading this book. Let's see if you can see it. If I, there we go. You can kind of see it. Let's see if I no, no, no. A little bit. It's called Loving Him Well. Oh, look, if I do like this. There we go. It's called Loving Him Well by Gary Thomas. He's actually a Texas guy. So if you don't know that about me, I'm from Texas. And this book really covers a wide variety of topics. Today, we're going to talk about the first 3 chapters. If you haven't read it yet, listen to me now if you want, then download the book or go buy the book and listen or read these first 3 chapters. Or pause me now, get the book, get your first 3 chapters read, and then come back and hear what I have to say about it. But the topics are all over the place, and some of them are not for little ears. So I do want to give you that warning if you're listening to this in front of them. Like, we may be talking about some difficult. Today's not going to be so bad, but just again, just want to give you that warning. with caution. Today, we're actually going to be talking about the first three chapters, which is Your Marriage Makeover Begins with You. This is pretty much what part one is all about. And that's also going to include Be Worthy of Me and the Beauty of God's Strength in Women. And so, talking about and breaking down those things as I was reading the chapters, I took notes on some things that were really speaking to me on what it is to be a loving wife, how to love our husbands well. And this book is going to break down some things on biology as far as like what men are wired to do and think and act, and how women are wired to do and think and act, and our expectations when it comes to those things, and then really knowing your own value and worth and who you are in God's image, that you do have a say so. And these situations are going to show us some of the worst. And I find that beneficial though, because if these things work for them, then they can work for us. I'm going to share you a little bit of my story and my insight on doing some of these things and how it backfired on me a bit as far as in my previous marriage, but I also was doing it in my own strength. I did not have a relationship with the Lord then. And even though I went to church, I called myself a Christian, I was trying to do and fix everything myself. And so my first marriage failed after 7 years. Found myself in my mid-20s, divorced with 2 children, and as we go through this process, I might share a little bit of little snippets, here and there of some of those things as well. So if you're here today and you're like, "Yeah, I saw your post," like, maybe you and I are friends in real life, maybe you were friends just on social media, and you're like, my marriage isn't bad, it just isn't as good as it could be." That's where I would kind of like measure my marriage. I would say it's good. It's not great. It's not fantastic. It has been. It can be. My husband is fantastic and incredible. And I think he would probably say that about me. But when it comes to us in our relationship, I would say it's just good. And I don't want a just good enough marriage. I want a freaking fantastic marriage. I want an awesome marriage. I want my best friend back. Like, I want time with him. I want to prioritize us. I want at the end of the day, when our kids do finally get things figured out and our doors are not revolving anymore and we have the house to ourselves, for us to want to be here and enjoy each other and not just be exhausted or let life just pass us by. So are y'all ready to get into it? That was a super long intro. Loving Him Well by Gary Thomas is the book that we're doing. We're gonna do 3 chapters today, and I may have guests on here as time goes. I have reached out to a couple people, so as time goes on, I may bring some people on here as well. I like interview style. I like to have conversations. I might even bring my husband, Randall, on here at points so that we can talk about some things. It gets into some topics of, like, pornography, and I'm hoping to find, like, somebody that's way smarter than me when it comes to that kind of stuff, and just be able to ask them questions, because that is not something that I've had to deal with, like, on a normal, regular basis, and so I don't feel like I have, like, really good insight to be able to offer advice, but I am here to facilitate what Gary is talking about in his book. So, again, I am not the expert per se. I have been the expert in some of these areas that we will be discussing, but I am also using this time to keep myself accountable and to walk through this book and study it along with you and put these things into practice. That's what Randall and I were talking about yesterday when I finally did carve out some time and we were floating in the pool, and he says, "So how are we gonna make this date night thing work?" And I was like, I don't know. I don't know. I feel like we've tried all the different methods. We know the right answer, but every week, and I don't know if it's a blended family thing or parenting adult kids or being married 16 years. I don't know what the reason is, but we try and we say we're gonna do it, and we're just tired and exhausted or whatever, and I feel like if we, as the so-called experts, are struggling with this, then you guys are probably struggling with this too, and I feel like we've made similar videos like this in the past because we go through cycles of this, of trying to make sure that our marriage is the forefront, and then somebody moves back in, somebody moves out, job changes, decide we're gonna sell the house, whatever the case might be, and our focus shifts. And so I'm taking you on this journey with me. All right. So here we go. I have taken notes. Let me open those up now. We're going to start with chapter 1. And chapter 1 is your marriage makeover starts with you. And the gist of this, the main thing that I got from chapter 1 is that no matter how bad your marriage is, you have a say so and you have control into making it better. And he says over and over, he continues to reiterate that doesn't mean the responsibility is all on you. Your husband still has a choice, a say in the matter. He gets to choose what he's going to do with what's taking place. But you don't have to sit back and wait for your husband to step up and finally leading. Maybe you want your husband to be the spiritual leader in your house, and he's not. You don't have to sit back and wait for him to do his part before you can do your part. It maybe your husband refuses to work or can't find a job or whatever. You don't have to wait for him to get his stuff together in order for you to start putting these things into practice. You don't have to wait for him to start being nice to you and loving you and showing you the respect that you deserve before you can start doing your part to improve this marriage. And some of the examples they gave were pretty extreme, and it's like, man, but the crazy, the sad, the whatever thing is, a lot of you are going through that as well. So although to me it might seem extreme, to someone else, you might say, finally, somebody gets it. This is the same boat that I've been in. So you have the ability to make changes. And in order for you to get that in your head, I think he really wanted you to know that you have value. That when God created the world, he created all of these incredible, unique things to make the earth what it is. He created man. And then when he created the woman, that is when he stopped and rested. That is when he said, and it is good. You, my friend, you as a woman have value. There's a lot of uh, mixed up culturally uh, things that have, and even in Christianity, you have your husband here, and then you are under them. And it's not that you are less than your husband, and that you have to be submissive to him. So everything he says goes, and he could be crap to you, he can hurt you, he has authority to do whatever he wants, and you have to sit back and take it. That's not what this book is saying. He wants you to know that your life, your happiness, your survival for some of you guys, that is important to God too. Yes, God hates divorce, but God also hates when men come in and use and abuse power to keep women in a miserable situation and cause harm to them physically, emotionally, mentally, and all of that. And so, although God doesn't want us divorced, He wants you safe. Now, does He want you happy? Maybe. There's this quote in the book, though, that says, maybe marriage, let me see if I have it. I think it's now towards the end. And it might have been in chapter 2. Yeah, I think it's in chapter 2, but it says something about maybe marriage isn't to make you happy. Maybe even more than that, it's to make you holy. And so we'll talk more about that. It's not that God wants you to get divorced. He doesn't. that, "Oh, you need to go chase after happiness because I see that all over Instagram. You're not happy in this marriage? Go. Sister, get there, find somebody that's gonna treat you right." But somewhere in between that, that you find yourself, and if you're here today and you're listening to this point, I would assume you understand that, like, you're here because you want to be a good wife. You want to have a good marriage. You want God to be at the center of that. And so that is where I'm going to ask you some questions. Who is your refuge? Is it your husband or is it God? Okay. Or maybe you've made it even into somebody else. Is it social media, scrolling? Is it your job? Is it your daddy? Like, is it another man? Like, who have you made your refuge? The answer should be God. Whom does your hope lie? Do you put all of that in your husband or do you put it in God? Where do you find your security? Is it in your husband and what he can provide for you, or is it in God? When you put your husband in these spots, you've made your marriage and your husband your God. Let that sink in for a minute. When you make your husband when you put your husband let me read it again. When you put your husband in these spots, you have made your marriage and your husband your God. And I think a lot of us can be really guilty of that. Our husband can be our security, especially if you're a stay-at-home mom and you're not bringing in an income per se, but your husband is out there working and he's the one that pays the bills and you may feel stuck in this situation like you can't get out. And again, we're not we're not saying run, get out, but I am saying being in a position where you feel like you cannot make it financially makes you dependent on your spouse, and when you are dependent on your spouse in that way, sometimes it can become unhealthy because they become your security instead of God becoming your security. The Your spouse becomes your safe place, your place of refuge instead of you turning to God for those things. So as you're letting those questions sink in, what happens when an idol disappoints you? Mm, usually some bitterness, sadness, and sometimes even despair come when you have put your trust, your faith in your spouse, and they have let you down. More often than not, we as women will become bitter about the situation. We will become bitter in our relationship. I know I am so guilty of this. When Randall and I are in our two ships passing in the night stage, and I am so I'm such a people pleaser, and I want my husband to be happy that I will bend over backwards to make sure that's taking place, to do certain things, and there's other things that I am, like, blind to, and that I know, like, after the fact, like, "Oh, man, I should've stayed on top of that. I should have made sure I got groceries this week so that when he goes to work on Monday morning, he has a lunch to take with him or breakfast." That's a duty that I take on in our house, and sometimes I get busy with the kids or whatever, and I don't make our grocery list, and now it's morning. Does he have the ability to go grab his own food? Yes, he does, but I have taken ownership and pride over doing that for him. I don't do those things, and I feel like I've disappointed him, and then if I feel like I'm getting even a tinge of attitude or whatever coming from him, now I'm mad that he's mad at me, or now I'm upset that he's mad at me, or now I'm bitter that he's mad at me. So my emotions are being judged off of his emotions towards me. So the next part was, how will you take the risk to have these hard conversations? If you and your spouse have set yourself up for a situation where you have these expectations of each other and you have not really discussed them, and now it's causing these pain points and bitterness between the 2 of you, how are you gonna move past that and have these hard conversations? That is a question that you have to ask yourself. That is something that you're gonna need to work through. Because if you truly want to love and motivate and influence your husband, you must first you must first stay connected with God. And so that is our first piece of advice with this, how to love your husband well. And I know not all of you guys that follow us here at Enjoying Your Blended Family are Christian, but I think you know by now that we are. And some of these things you could do on your own, but a lot of this advice is going to be in the strength of your creator. It's going to be on pulling on him, connecting with him first before you even connect with your spouse, and that's biblical, to put God first above anything else, and that includes your spouse. And so, if you're in a situation where things need to change, first, you're taking that to the Lord and asking God to help guide you in this, to give me some ideas, open up an opportunity for me and my spouse to have some of these hard conversations, and then when he does, to have these conversations in love on what these things that you're feeling and what you've been experiencing, and let him in on that. I had this dream last night where I was locking the door and going to the bathroom. I share dreams a lot on Prayers from my mom, but not as much, I don't think, here at Enjoying Your Blended Family. But when I am going to the bathroom in my dream, it's usually me experiencing some sort of vulnerability. It's subconsciously showing me that I need to be vulnerable or I was maybe too vulnerable or something in a situation. And so in my dream, I am in a little kid, like I'm trying to go to the bathroom in a little kid's training potty. And now I have gone and I have locked the door out and I'm trying to figure out how to dispose of that. And it was just this reminder this morning as I was talking to God about this dream of like, I don't I don't want to shut him out. I want him to be on the inside. I want to be able to have these conversations with him. Sometimes I can have these conversations here online before I can have them with him because you guys are not typing in the chats. You don't have any rebuttals for me. I'm just talking, I'm sharing my heart, and it's like this dear diary moment. But when I'm talking to him, he has facial expressions and he has his own opinions and he might have an attitude with some things that comes out and then it causes division. So figuring out how are we going to have these hard conversations. And then if you truly oh, I already read that. Oh, and then they shared this story of Andrea in the book was her name, and in this story, she has been waiting and waiting and waiting for her husband to make the steps of leading and guiding in the way that she wants him to. And her friend really challenges her, like, "Why are you gonna wait for him when you could start moving and doing things on your own?" And so she's like, "Challenge accepted." And she takes it on and she decides instead of just focusing on her marriage even, she decides to focus on her relationship with the Lord. She begins to dive deep into that, praying and worshiping, reading her Bible, journaling, and as she begins to do these things, her husband is taking notice. And it talks about in the book, the problems have not gone away. Her husband is not necessarily the guy that she thinks still that she wishes he would or do the things that she wishes he would do. But he begins to notice the changes in her, and then he begins to make these subtle changes himself. I, like, all of a sudden got, like, really sleepy, and I feel like my eyes are, like, circling all around. I don't know what that's about. Probably because I have an afternoon coffee around this time, but I haven't even, like, sat down to, like, after I got home. 'Cause after I left work, then I went and I did my therapy session, then I picked up groceries, I came here, and then my stepdaughter got some good news, and so we went to celebrate that for lunch, and I sat down here to record with you. Which why I needed to overshare that, I don't know, but, that's what I do sometimes. So, with that, she began to make these changes, and then her husband began to take note of these changes. Life did not change, the problems did not go away, but she changed how she responded till the situations change. And that right there is key. That is huge. That is in our power. So she started to fall more in love with Jesus. Instead of prioritizing and focusing on her marriage in that moment, she began to focus on building that relationship, and then the rest started to come from that. Um, it says the relationship isn't different, but she is. Before you can influence someone, you need to become spiritually strong. So, how do we become spiritually strong? We read our Bible, we pray, we worship, we fast, we go to church, and we surround ourselves by other believers. We read books like what we're doing right now and grow in that. These are all ways that we can make a step and a choice to be our best versions of us. Now, I thought I was gonna be able to get through all 3 chapters. I don't know that's possible because we are already 30 minutes in, and that was just chapter 1. But we'll see, because it's a lot of the same stuff in this, just with a little bit, like, more, deeper and more detail on here. So now chapter 2, "Be worthy of me." So the me being God. God uses the weaknesses of others to help us grow. We can't guarantee success in this world or in this war, but we can control if we deserve success. So let me say that again. We cannot control and guarantee success at the end of it. If you're going into war, you're going into these battles with your spouse, you're going and you're fighting for this cause. We cannot guarantee that at the end of this, you're going to come out with a happy, more enjoyable marriage. But what you can guarantee is that you deserve that and that you know that you deserve that. At my when I was in my mid-20s and when my marriage was falling apart, we were military. What's happening here? We were military. My ex-husband was getting out after serving his 4 years, and I had moved back to Texas. He was in California, then he went, I think, somewhere else in between, and then he came home. And I remember, because I had begun to pursue the Lord and a relationship with Him, going to church. I still didn't have, like, a relationship with the Lord, but I was going to church trying to improve my life, and it upset and frustrated my first husband, and he was not on board with it because he felt like I should be home doing these certain things, making sure that he had food, what have you. And really, I mean, we were both good. He had just come back from fighting overseas, his life on the line, seeing friends die, like, there was a lot happening there, a lot of different situations, PTSD, that kind of stuff, and I was ill-equipped to be able to know how to handle that during that season, and so we got this really I was just rehashing this night with my neighbor as we were having a garage sale this weekend, and we were talking about credit cards and just stuff, like the types of things that get us in trouble in adulthood. And we were talking about it, and I said, "Yeah, that's pretty much credit cards is one of the huge downfalls in my marriage," because one night I had found some credit card bills that were coming in, and I was so upset because I did not want us to ruin our credit, and so I called him, as a mother would, right? I called him and, like, began to yell at him and tell him, like, "What are you thinking? Why do you have this?" And really coming at him in an attacking way, and in that moment, he was like, "Yeah, I'll be home in just a little bit," like, and in my head, that meant, like, he was coming now, like, from the town he was in, so about 15 minutes, and he didn't come home that night, and I remember being so upset and so frustrated that when he finally did come home in the morning, that I told him I was leaving. I was putting up some boundaries in my anger, and I was gonna go live with my grandma for a little bit and let things cool down, and in that process of the 2 weeks that it took me to, like, calm down, chill out, what wait Avril Lavigne coming into my head, um, but get to a point where it's like, "Okay, let's figure out what's next, what are we doing?" Then I find out he's already living with somebody else. I don't know that he had this somebody else all along. I don't know if this somebody else, maybe they were just friends. He was doing tattoos on people at the time. She was a hairstylist, so I don't know if they just had like mutual friends and that kind of stuff. But they end up in a relationship together, and I'm like, wait, what? I was just taking a break. Uh, just call me Rachel for friends because I thought we were just taking a break. And just like Ross, he moved on. That's what happened in my marriage. And I'm like, no, like there was never my desire to be alone or to get a divorce. I needed time. I needed time away. I wanted, I wanted to punish him. I wanted him to know, like he needs to follow my rules, basically. I need him to know that he needs to do what he needs to do, and in that process, my marriage came crashing down, and so I do want you to know that, like, you can do all the right things, and it can still not work out. You could do the right things with wrong things sprinkled in, and it can still not work out. You could do the wrong things and it could not work out. Like, I mean, it could work out. Like, there's so many different scenarios in all of this, but I want you to know that you do have a say so and control in there. And if at the end your marriage doesn't work out, because you made the right choices, you did the hard work, you're going to come out the other side of this victorious. I can tell you that without a doubt. I walked through that season of my life and I am stronger and better and more equipped to be a better wife now than I was with my first husband because of the struggles that we went through. Whew. See, you can act in such a way that transformation is more likely. So again, you can't force them to do something, but you can act in a way that makes them want to do better, be better, whatever. Your husband is accountable for his responses. You're responsible for your things. And what if your husband's faults are the very tool God this quote was so good. What if what if your husband's faults are the very tool God has used to shape you? Let that sink in. Where you are weak, where he is driving you insane in these certain areas, this might be the area that you need to grow in the most. That right there, that'll preach. I have been putting together a lesson for a while because of some things that God was showing me a while back about our husband's burdens. And God was showing me I have such a beautiful position as Randall's wife. I can see things in him, the good, but also the bad, the things that he needs changed. And instead of going after him and attacking him to make the changes, I'm able to uplift him and encourage him so that then he chooses to make those changes. And what if God designed marriage? Oh, this was the quote right there. What if God designed marriage more to make us holy, even more than to make us happy? So when you are choosing to look at your husband's faults as an opportunity of where you're growing, wow, wow. That's life changing because it truly is. You come out of this either way, you come out of it happily in a more intimate marriage and you are a better version of you, or you come out of it divorced and you are a better version of you. But regardless, you did what you could do to keep this marriage together. And I loved this quote too. God did not create women to be passive and saved by men. That is cultural. That is not biblical. That we're just supposed to sit back and let the men do all the things and come and provide all of our needs. And they're way up here and we are down here. I sent that to my girls this morning because that was really speaking to me. They're at a stage where they think they need a man or a sugar daddy, is what they call it. Well, in our area, we call them plant daddies, where they marry somebody that's making all that money so that they can move out on their own and they can become moms wives and all of that stuff. Yes, you do need a husband in a lot of instances. In order to be married, you need a spouse. In order to be a mother, most of the time, you need a father in the family as well. I know we live in a day and age where a lot of people don't think that is culturally the norm now, but as a Christian in our beliefs, that is what we believe. So let me see. Nothing compares to being married to a godly woman. He was talking about his own wife here too. And our husbands don't want a weak woman. They don't want someone coming over here and taking charge and like putting them down all the time, but they want somebody that can care for themselves, that has a mind of their own, that can think for themselves, that can pursue things for themselves. That is what your husband wants. So keep that in mind. And nothing is more tiresome than being married to a narcissist or a weak woman, someone that is constantly turning things around and making it all about themselves or not being able to do anything for themselves. And then the other benefit of that is you are giving your kids at least one positive role model to look up after. Because if you're waiting for your spouse to take the lead in this area of being the spiritual leader in your home and you're doing nothing, your kids are missing out. They're not getting to see it from dad, but they're not getting to see it from mom either. Then it goes in to share this story about this woman. And I think, man, no, I want to be able to get it all in. We can get it all in. We're going to make this happen. Okay. I'm going to share the story really quick. So this woman's husband ends up in some sort of accident or something. He ends up with short-term memory loss. And most people would be like, oh man, that sounds awful. Like, how do you do it to be with someone that's constantly forgetting everything that you were saying and that you were doing? And they do have the ability to learn new things, but it has to be so repeated, so repeated, so repeated, so that it becomes like second nature to them. And she was like, yes, at first I felt that way, that it was a burden. She's like, but it really truly ended up being a blessing because of that, it forces them to talk about the hard issues immediately. Because if she waits, then they're not going to be able to work on it. They're not going to be able to talk through it because he's going to forget that they even had the conversation. Is that not crazy? And so she has had to learn that, because she still has her memory, right? So if she does something or he does something and they're offended, she either is still walking around with the guilt from it, or she is still offended from something he did, but he doesn't even remember that he did it. So she's just like living with that. And then another thing is that they don't have to worry. It says, don't have fights or have the sun or let the sun go down before they, my eyes are getting so heavy. Don't have fights or sun. My notes are really hard to read. Or, hold something over each other. Okay, that's what it is. Don't hold something over each other's head. That's where another thing, like he doesn't remember to be like, well, last week you said this. Last week you did this. He doesn't have that memory. He doesn't have the ability to be able to say those things. And so he's not able to hold it over her head. What a beautiful gift that is, to not hold the things, the wrongdoings, the sin over one another's head. It's a beautiful thing that it just like dismisses out of his thoughts. And not holding on to something from way in the past and bringing that up and letting that bitterness sit in there. So, those are some great things that it talked about in the scripture. And it says, when you're married to a defective man, and all men are, so are we women, you have to learn the skills and perseverance to stay with him. You don't leave because it's hard. Yes, there are hard things happening. Yes, you might need to take a break. You might even get your own apartment for a time, but you choose to stay faithful. You choose to strengthen that relationship with the Lord. You choose to put your focus on God and what he has in store for you. And if you have children, putting your focus on the children instead of constantly focusing on what it is that you don't have, what it is that he isn't doing. And it had this little formula that Yes, we cannot change other people, but when we change ourselves, that changes the equation. So if the formula is A plus B equals C, you might not be able to change A. He may be stubborn as all get out, but you can change B. You can change yourself. And when you change yourself, now you have A plus 2B, and that equals D. It doesn't equal the same thing anymore because now you have added something different in there. So I thought that was like another beautiful analogy. And to remember that this book is about influencing, having an influence on your husband, not changing your husband. Nobody wants to be with someone that wants to change who they are. Your husband is your husband. There may be negative qualities about them. Some of those things might be petty, some of those things might be legit, but it is your husband. Um, who it's who you fell in love with. Remember that right now. Why did you fall in love with your husband? And keep those things in the forefront of your mind, and then know like those things will fade over time, but you still have the heart of who your spouse is. And he knows, God knows, he knows who you were going to marry. Even if last minute you changed your mind and married somebody else, God still knew that that was going to take place. So keeping that in mind as well. Oop, I went the wrong way. Oop. Chapter 3. I don't remember what chapter 3 was called. Let me look it up. Fake that out. Okay. Let me get back to forgot. Oh, Google Photos. That's what I was looking for. I was like, where did it go? Here we are. So, chapter 3, the beauty of God's strength in women. And this I had very, very short, just a little bit of notes that I had taken on this, but I accidentally deleted, or not deleted. I just went out of my, it's called Loving Him Well. Let me open up my notes. Okay. Now, this part is really interesting. So, get ready. Sit up in your seat. There's something called functional fixedness. Now, if you have told your spouse over and over and over why they need to stop doing something, why they need to start doing something, and they have not listened to you and they keep doing things the way that they want to do things, that is called functional fixedness. You have trained them and they have trained you on to go through this pattern of life where they need something and you step in and you fill that gap. That is functional faithfulness. No, faith. Functional fixedness. Now, in order to get out of this, you have to make it painful for your spouse. It can't just be, oh, it hurts my feelings when. Them hurting your feelings, for some people, that's not enough. It's not enough to entitle any kind of change, and they're going to keep doing it. And if you let your spouse continue to walk all over you, they're going to continue to walk all over you. Ah, just got something in my eye. It's burning. Okay. I don't know why my eyes like have got to the point while we're here. Maybe it's the light. What if I turn this light off? Oh shoot, that's like a million times better. I had the webcam light on and that's where I stare to be able to talk in. So I kept like trying to like close my eyes, but then every time I do that, it's like making me so sleepy. So the functional fixedness is if he does not have to experience pain, he's not going to change it. And this example came to mind when I was listening to this part, and that is I drive our older car. It's my grandma's car. When before she passed away, she was no longer able to drive. I inherited this car from her, and it's an older car. It was a great car when she had it. I didn't take good care of it. I've kind of like run it down, but it had tinting in the back of the window. And because of like the heat or something here, that tint had started to do this like crystallization kind of thing where it made it really hard to see out the back window. And I would complain about it all the time. this is so annoying. I can't see out the back window. It's so frustrating. I almost got in an accident today. I would tell him all these kind of stories. Nothing, 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 nothing. He would never go and just fix it. I don't know what I wanted him to do. I wanted him to make the problem go away. He's a man, it's a car. That's his job, right? Then he has to borrow the car for some reason, and I take the truck. And you know what? You know what happened to my car? Before the day was over, he ripped off all of that tint on that back window. He's like, I'm not doing this. This is stuck. You can't see out the window. He said all the same things that I have always said, but because it affected him, now he had some skin in the game. Now he was willing to make a change. But when it's out of sight, out of mind, or comfortable, they're not going to make the change. So you have to make it uncomfortable for them, not in a mean, bitch kind of way, but in a setting up some healthy boundaries that you're not going to allow these things to continue to take place. If he refuses to get a job, then you're going to separate your finances so that it doesn't sink you more and more. If his drinking causes him to get angry and frustrated every time y'all go out together, you're not going out with him anymore. If he's spending your money more than you should on going out to eat out, you stop going out to eat out with him. If those two were kind of like in the same kind of example about like talking about finances and stuff. If uh if he's having an affair, that, I mean, it's biblical, like you can leave for that reason, right? It says that. But you love your husband and you don't want to leave. There was a situation, a story in here. If he's having an affair, you let him know, like, I love you, but while you're doing these things that I'm not okay with, I'm removing myself from the equation. Go get yourself an apartment or kick him out if you can. Like, in the story, the counselor, the guy was willing to go to counseling. And he's like, you caused this problem. You go stay in the other apartment until you can prove yourself. All these different things, like whatever it is that they're doing, having some sort of consequence that goes along with it that you do have control over and boundaries. And I feel like all of this stuff in part one feels like kind of negative, but in loving him well, then we need to understand what our part is and what his part is and what we can do to improve the situation. And so for a lot of people that are reading this book, it's because they're struggling in their marriage because this or this is happening. So let's look at the this and this, and let's put up some healthy boundaries in these areas. And then when they experience the pain of not whatever that you normally step in and handle for them, then they will be more willing to make the changes that they need to make. And if they don't, then you move on. You not move on as far as like go get yourself a boyfriend. You start taking care of you. You continue to draw closer to God, those things that we were talking about earlier. So there may be time for separation. It says, again, we're not saying get a divorce, but separation is different than divorce. It's giving yourself time to breathe in order to allow both of y'all to assess the situation and do what is needed to improve your marriage. So it says the same Bible that hates divorce also hates harsh treatment towards the wives and unfaithfulness. So just remember that, because a lot of people will just take it and take it and take it and just have an unhappy marriage because they're trying to please their husband, and they're afraid that if they get divorced, then they are disappointing God and God will turn his back on them. And it's not the case. I mean, there's a lot of religions and people that do believe that's the case, but it's not the case. Uh, God is against divorce in most cases, but he is against marriage that sucks the life out of women as well. And then it started talking about what can you do in the meantime, regardless of where you find yourself on the spectrum. Maybe you just want a better marriage. You feel like it's stagnant. You're feeling the effects of weary and tiredness of raising little kids, or that season of busyness when they're involved in extracurricular activities, or maybe he's gone all the time and you just want his help at home. Maybe it's a lot deeper and there's a lot of other really intense issues going on. So, regardless of where you find yourself on the spectrum there, that you choose to form an alliance with some other women that are in the same boat that you are, and you begin to make a prayer team. You begin to lift each other up. You gather together and you pray for your spouses. You begin to pray that God is going to make a difference in their life, that He's going to speak to them, He's going to soften their heart, He's going to turn them from the things that they have been doing and open their eyes to where they need to change. You use that time to really dig into that relationship with the Lord, and then find an alliance with other women, not men, an alliance with other women, and you began to lift each other up and lift each other's spouses up as well. And instead of obsessing, I love this part, instead of obsessing over the symptoms, ask God to heal the disease. So you may be in a situation where the girls are home, so I'm probably gonna have to wrap it up now. You may be in a situation where there's all of these things in your marriage that you are staying focused on the negative things that are happening in your marriage. But instead of doing that, begin to really ask God, what is deeper under this? As this summer series continues and we're really digging into loving Him well, we're going to talk about some really hard topics in there. And so begin to see, like, man, why does He do the things that He does? And a lot of times, as you begin to ask God to reveal why these things are taking place, you're going to begin to see opportunities for your conversations to start coming out. You might need to team up with a counselor and have some professional, someone asking these questions and digging these things out. We have some really good friends and resources here with XO Marriage, and they have some things called weekend marriage intensives. And man, they fly to you or you fly to them, and they spend an entire weekend. Instead of you doing an hour of therapy like every week or every other week, they sit with you for like 72 hours, and they start asking the really hard questions and dig deep into what is at the core of this, so that when you rip that band-aid off and you figure out, like, you see that wound, you see the infection, you begin to put the healing in place and have the tools that you need to move forward in your marriage. And so I loved that quote in the book, because there is resources available. We don't live in a day and age where it's just you, where you got nothing. Like, you're not on your own. We have professionals, coaches, all from actual licensed therapists to coaches that are able to help you in these areas. And then the last thing, I didn't write down all of Ephesians. I think it was Ephesians 1:17 or something like that. But in the book, it lists out the entire prayer. Go find that in Ephesians 1. I wrote down Ephesians 1:17 when I was listening to it, so I'm not exactly sure, or if it was Ephesians 17 or something that they were stating in the book. But it's this beautiful, powerful prayer for you to speak over your marriage. I mean, incredible. And so team up with another group of women that are dealing with some of the things, or at least one other person that's dealing with these things that you're dealing with, and begin to declare these truths over each other, and then watch what God begins to do in that. Let me be one of your resources. Send me a DM on Instagram or on TikTok and let me know, like, hey, I need prayer right now. This is the situation that me and my husband are going through, and I will keep that between us. And usually I prefer to send like a voice text prayer back to you, just so that you know, like, I am in agreement with you and we are praying over these things. And then I love to hear back from you guys, so that I know, like, I see God working in your family. So you're not alone in this area. All right. So that's all I got for chapter 1, 2, and 3. That's actually considered part 1 in loving Him well. So we accomplished a lot just in this one. Even though it was a full hour podcast, we discussed a lot of things during this time. So start working there. There's plenty of homework that you have. The first thing is that you are striving on that relationship with the Lord. You cannot change anybody else in your family, in your relationships. You can change you. You can dig into that relationship with God and let God begin to deal with those other relationships as well. Regardless of where your marriage ends, at the end of this, you're going to be different and changed and better. And usually that is contagious with those people around you. So start there, and then begin to ask yourself those questions. Where have you put your spouse in these relationships? Is he someone that you are putting in place of God, and you are putting pressure on who he is as a person and expecting something from him that's not his role to play? That is where God is in your life. He is your security. He's your safe place. He's your counselor. He's your healer. He's the one. God is the one that can do all of those things. And then find you a group of women that you can team up with. And here we are at Enjoying Your Blended Family. I'm here. I'm teaming up with you this summer, so that and then whatever time you listen to this, maybe you find this video a year from now or something, but I'm here with you. Send me a message, or find you some people in your community, find you some people in your church that are willing to work with you. I'm going to pray real quick, and then we're going to shut this out. So Father, I just thank you that you're here, and that you're present, and that you're working. I thank you that it's not an accident that my friend decided to listen to this one. Lord, whether they listen all the time, or this is the first one that they've ever heard, but that they are choosing, they are seeking how to love their spouse better. Lord, I thank you that as we do the work that you're asking us to do, that you are working on the things that are outside of our power. Lord, we give you the control over our marriage. We put you first before anything else. And we thank you that we can trust you with our marriage. We can trust you with our life. We can trust you with our family. Lord, we thank you that you are softening the hearts of our spouses so that we can have the hard conversations with them. Lord, I thank you that you are giving us new creative ways to spend time with our spouse, to set up boundaries with our spouse, to heal our marriage from the inside out for anyone that is struggling in this way. Lord, you are guiding and directing every step. If there's women out there that are in any kind of situation that is unsafe for them, that you are providing the resources that they need to allow the space that they need for their marriage to heal, and for their spouse to take the steps that they need. Lord, I thank you that if someone is contemplating divorce right now, that you are intervening, and where they may have stepped outside of their marriage and began to do things that are not of you, Lord, that you are guiding in them and directing them, that even in a time of separation, that it doesn't mean that they have to move on. It doesn't mean their marriage is over, that they focus on you more than anything else, and that you're directing their path. Lord, I thank you that your heart is for marriages to be one, to be connected, to be restored. And I bind up anything that the enemy is trying to do to kill, steal, and destroy that. I thank you that you are a God that is for family, for the family unit, and that you want them to stay together. But you do not want a woman to be in a situation where she is being hurt and harmed on a regular basis, and that you love her enough that you would rather see her safe than to stay in a situation where it's causing her pain and heartache. Lord, I thank you. I thank you that you're working. And I pray all this in Jesus' name. Amen. All right. Whew, okay. Well, now my other kids here too. Grandbaby's here. Everybody's here. Time to get off. I love you guys. This was week 1. And so stay tuned for the next chapters. Get the book, Loving Him Well by Gary Thomas. It's on Amazon. It's pretty much where any books are at. And it's also, if you have a library card, you can check it out from the library, or find the digital version as well for a lot of the libraries if you're not able to afford it right now. So just wanted to put that out there as well. See you next time.